What we just witnessed is the perfect example of when innovation outpaces infrastructure. Sonder was supposed to bridge tech-driven flexibility with hotel-grade consistency. But the second those systems had to integrate at scale, reservations, loyalty, property management, customer service, the whole thing buckled. That wasn't just a failed merger, it was a culture clash. Tech startups, they move fast, they break things, they prioritize user experiences, and hotel giants move slow. They mitigate risks, they prioritize brand integrity. So trying to fuse those two worlds without a shared operational backbone was a recipe for chaos.
Social platforms are going to be the new OTAs.
Whoever owns the moment of intent controls the bookings.
Are we going to get a bubble? There are thousands of hotels with hundreds of rooms that still need to be filled.
We're going to be focused on this independent, cool lifestyle and luxury, but I have to market like a bank.
I think that we can give our 2 cents into the stories that are going on.
Will be in your ears and on your screens every Friday morning.
Let's do it.
Let's roll.
This is the gold, bro. This is the gold.
Welcome to This Week in Hospitality, a weekly analysis designed for the people building the next generation of hospitality brands. Each Friday, we take you beyond the headlines to examine the ideas, market forces, and cultural shifts reshaping travel and lodging. This show exists for independent owners, operators, and entrepreneurs who don't have time to sift through the noise, but who want to understand what actually matters and how the week's developments will impact the work they're doing on the ground. Our conversations are guided by a team whose experiences span every corner of the industry. Ben Wolff, the visionary behind Onera, one of the most distinctive landscape hotel concepts in the Texas Hill Country, and Awasi, a next-generation management company elevating experiential hotels across the world. Scott Eddy, one of the most respected voices in global hospitality storytelling, trusted by luxury hotel brands and tourism boards around the world to shape how they connect with today's travelers. And Edwin Kramer, a leader who has run some of the world's most admired luxury hotels, including being general manager at Four Seasons, Edition, and so many more. Edwin brings an operator's precision and a global lens to every conversation. And I'm Zach Busekrus, head of growth at Journey, a loyalty platform for the world's top independently owned and operated hospitality brands, and host of the Behind the Stays podcast, where I've spent years interviewing the founders and creators building the next generation of great and truly remarkable hospitality brands. Together, we break down the news, identify the real opportunities, and help you think more clearly about the future you're building for every week. All right, friends, without further ado, let's get started. Well, folks, we are live, gentlemen, with the first episode of This Week in Hospitality. I am totally pumped for this show. I know that you all are as well. It's been really fun to see the feedback we've gotten from folks since we released the trailer last week. I've gotten lots of DMs. I'm sure you guys have as well. Scott, that reel, that you posted went viral as podcast reels, I think, go, which was wildly exciting. But what I want to do, we've got a lot of news to talk about today. It's been a big week in hospitality. But before we get started on the news docket, since this is the pilot episode, I do want to just go around the room here and quickly talk about why each of you is doing this podcast. Why are we all here? Why should people listen to us? There are a zillion podcasts out there in the space. There are a fair number of hospitality-specific podcasts out there in the space. So what are we going to do that's different? What are you guys excited about? Each of you is incredibly busy in your own right. So why even carve out time every week to spend an hour plus together? Scott, let's start with you here. Why are you doing this? Why are you excited about the show? And what would you give folks who are tuning in for the very first time as sort of the reason behind why they should spend their Friday mornings with us?
I mean, I'm doing this podcast because the industry moves faster than it's ever been before. And most people can't afford to fall behind. So they need something to use as sort of a crutch. Each week there's a new merger, a new tech announcement, a new crisis. Hello, Sonder. A new trend that changes the way business operates. But The truth is, most of that news gets buried under press releases and PR spins. And what we want to do here is strip away all the fluff, talk about what's actually happening in the industry and how it impacts operators, investors, employees, and guests in real time. This isn't a highlight reel, it's a reality check.
I love that. You're really good at the one-liners, Scott. I feel like sometimes you talk like an Instagram reel, which is amazing. Like it's very hard to do, but you nail it, man. You've been doing this for a while. Ben, what about you, man? I know that we've been friends for some time. You've been on every notable podcast in the industry and then some. Why are you doing this show?
I mean, I have been thinking about doing a podcast for a while, and I like you guys. I like Zach. I think we bring diverse perspectives. I think that it's important to help people in the hotel industry get out of like age-old industry norms. Like, hey, this is how we do things, so this is how we're going to continue doing things. The world in hospitality and more broadly, as Scott mentioned, is changing faster than ever. And I think it's hard for hoteliers, operators to keep up. So anything that we can do to shed some light on how things are changing, whether that's social media and content or changes in revenue management or changes in how to create one-of-a-kind experiences. I want to share that with the broader industry. So,
Ben, I have a quick follow-up to that. Since you have been on so many shows, and since I know that you're a consumer of podcasts, what's something that you want to do here that you've loved about being interviewed, right, in other contexts that you think we should replicate on the show? And then maybe quickly, like, what's one thing that you hope we don't fall into, the trap that podcasters can fall into? Just again, given your diversity of podcast appearances, I'd love to hear your answer to that question.
Yeah, I mean, look, not every podcast, but a lot of podcasts I've been on ask me, what's your story type thing, which we're going to kind of maybe get some of that out of the way in the first episode. But it's one of those things. It's like hard to get up for the story, say over and over and over again. So I do really appreciate podcasts that dive a little deeper and ask the follow-up questions. I feel like you've been really good about that. It's like, let's tease out a little bit more than just kind of whatever the response is that you've said over and over and over again. So I think that all four of us are good at that, diving a little bit deeper and really getting to like the truth and essence of things. So that's what I'm hopeful for sure.
Amazing. Edwin, how about you, man? Why are you doing a podcast? You are a lifelong GM, hotel operator. You've worked with some of the brands in the space that we all respect and look up to the most. Why are you taking time out of your very busy life to hang out with us every week?
So my first podcast, I was frightened, right? Because I speak to large teams, I do interviews, I talk to the press, I sit in front of rooms of 300 people, and just talking one-on-one with somebody without an audience, somehow it was a frightening experience. But I see the massive benefit in it. And I'm a lifelong hotel operator. I do something a little different right now, but I know how general managers and other operators in hotels often just really get bogged down by, daily operations, talking to asset managers, talking about their own brand, other hotels in their own company, and don't necessarily have the time or make the time of seeing what's out there in the world, because you get so bogged down by running your own operation. So what I'm hoping to do is, attract that part of the industry also to tune in and to see what we can share. I think this team, that what attracted me to this group is we have such different backgrounds and such different viewpoints possibly on things, right? And that's for us to explore also, which also makes it very exciting and fun. And I just get really a lot of energy in sharing exciting ideas about our industry and getting a broader perspective on hospitality.
Amazing. Well, folks, without further ado, let's dive into the first story of the week. So this story has been all over the place. If you work in hospitality, if you work in travel at all, your Twitter feed, your LinkedIn feed, your Instagram feed is just blowing up with the news that Sonder Holdings and Marriott International have suspended their partnership. Just a quick little recap in case you have been living under a rock. Sonder announced it was shutting down operations and preparing for bankruptcy immediately in light of this news, marking the end of one of hospitality's most ambitious experiments to merge the tech-driven short-term rental model with the stability of a global hotel brand like Marriott. Reports from guests show how sudden the unraveling was. There was a lot of screenshots from email messages and text messages that went out. You had in-house Marriott Bonvoy guests at Sonder Properties who were told via email to check out immediately, with Marriott offering refunds and help to rebook somewhere else. We saw some Expedia guests claiming losses of $4,000 or more after prepaid bookings were abruptly canceled, sparking, as you would imagine, outrage online over unclear refund policies. Meanwhile, Sonder's interim CEO, Janice Sears, blamed the collapse partly on the Marriott integration. She cited that major tech framework misalignments were at the root cause of this issue, primarily being that it just took way too long, quite frankly, to get integrated into Marriott's tech. Marriott has acknowledged the termination and forecasts a hit to its 2025 growth targets, but hasn't yet offered a detailed explanation of what went wrong on its end. In short, a bold hybrid hospitality experiment has ended not just with a fizzy, but a full-blown operational crisis, impacting travelers, investors, and of course the brand credibility of both brands. So this is a huge story. It merges the worlds of STRs, STR Tech. Sonder grew up, as the cousin, if you will, if you could, that's maybe a generous statement, the cousin of Airbnb, right? And it joined one of the largest hospitality brands that we've known in a century here. Scott, what is your read on this? You've got a global perspective on all things. What do you think went wrong here? What's maybe behind the tea leaves, so to speak? What do you think is at the root cause of this demise?
So what we just witnessed is the perfect example of when innovation outpaces infrastructure. Sonder was supposed to bridge tech-driven flexibility with hotel-grade consistency. But the second those systems had to integrate at scale, reservations, loyalty, property management, customer service, the whole thing buckled. That wasn't just a failed merger, it was a culture clash. Tech startups, they move fast, they break things, they prioritize user experiences, and hotel giants move slow. They mitigate risks, they prioritize brand integrity. So trying to fuse those two worlds without a shared operational backbone was a recipe for chaos. But here's the human side that's getting lost in all the headlines. Yes, guests were affected, being told overnight to vacate their rooms and scramble for new accommodations. But what about the employees? Thousands of Sonder staff reportedly received emails the same day notifying them that they were terminated, effective immediately. Imagine waking up one morning with no job, no severance, and no answers. These are real people, housekeepers, frontline staff, managers who built their lives around the company's promise of innovation.
Yeah.
I mean, this is terrible.
Yeah. It's certainly tough, and for an array of reasons. But I love the contrast you just outlined between, hey, is this just what happens when Silicon Valley meets Wall Street, so to speak, right? Is this just what happens when a startup has to integrate with a global brand that's been around for a century? Edwin, I want to get your perspective, having again worked with several Marriott brands yourself over the years. What do you think sort of is at the heart of this issue? Is this just what's the story here? Is it that STR tech driven brands just can never work with global brands like a Marriott? Like, what do you think's going on here?
Yeah, no, I think we have yet to get down to the bottom of what really happened, right? Because there's different mixed messages, and I think everybody's been scoring the web to find out, who's put what message out. But I'm not one massive for analogies, but I think right at the beginning, this was sort of the boyfriend, girlfriend, guy who had a personal brand, tried to make it out there in the world, wasn't connected well enough, and found a girl maybe a bit above his weight, punching weight, I think you call it. And she was very well connected, and he thought, well, if I marry her or I partner with her, then maybe it'll help me out, right? I haven't been able to put a quarterly financial report together for my own personal brand, but she'll fall for it, and we'll see what happens. a bit crazy, but I thought that was the first thought when I saw this partnership happening. But it made sense from a Marriott perspective, and I worked for Edition 7 years. We had our own brand team, but I was privy to a lot of things happening in Marriott. And Marriott's probably the most risk adverse company I know in the hospitality business. I mean, from an operational perspective, the stuff we didn't get to do, I couldn't draw a cycle map for guests because I can only draw a map with points of highlights, but I couldn't draw a route for them because if I told guests to go on that route and something would happen, Marriott would be held responsible. So, that's an operational level, but it was a very risk adverse company. So, a lot of people and everybody has an opinion at the moment are saying, well, they didn't do their due diligence. I mean, I don't think that's what happened, right? There's something else underneath that's happening. Having guests and staff put out on the street on day one, yes. From a staff perspective, I agree with Scott. I mean, this is a horrible story which you don't hear enough of. I think from a guest perspective, terrible what's happening from a loyalty guest point of view, from Bonvoy point of view. But we'll get over that. Things are forgotten. I think worst are those people that got stuck in hotels that are close to hospitals where their kids were having babies and they had to check out the same afternoon. It's the last thing that people had on their mind. But we'll get over that, right? I think the bigger point here is to find out exactly what happened and then what is this message for the entire industry? What's this going to do to due diligence? I mean, this was a clever move. It was a great company, a clever way of adding distribution for Marriott. But what's everybody else going to do at the moment when they're trying to combine power and contracts? So I think that's one to watch and to see what the industry is going to be shaken up by.
Yeah, I do wonder too, right? Your point, Edwin, about Marriott being very risk averse and maybe the most risk averse business or hospitality business in the industry. You've seen over the last months and even the last couple of years, maybe like a little bit more progress, or at least suggested progress. You saw Marriott innovating with its outdoor collection. You saw the partnership with Trailborn, right? There was the Sonder announcement. So it sort of did look, right, from a perspective anyways, that like, hey,
it was clever.
Grandpa's innovating again, right? He's coming out of retirement, so to speak, right? And so you saw these highlights of potential innovation, and even as I've always been very tech forward. I sort of like my brand perception of Marriott went up just seeing all these happenings, right? I got excited about the brand again. I was like, oh, we're innovating, which I hadn't felt in some time. Ben, I want your thoughts on this as a hotel developer. I mean, you build properties. Maybe at one day down the future, you'd love to be acquired by Marriott. Maybe you'd like to partner with one of their collections, right? What is a hotel developer, a brand developer like you? What's your perspective on all of this? Like, what do you think it says about Marriott? What do you think it says about building brands, building assets that might be attractive to the company? What was your general read on the story?
Yeah, so I had I guess, slightly different take than Edwin and Scott. I mean, I agree with a lot of their points, but I think the heart of the issue and what's been going on here for years, and I'm surprised that Marriott didn't see it, to be honest, is I don't think you can build a brand that people care about in the commodity short-term rental world. I don't think people care, right? People are on Airbnb, they're on the OTAs. If they're looking for a short-term rental, they care about the value for money. They care about the amenities. They care about the location. A lot of things they care about with the hotel. But there's no entrenched, rewards program. I mean, you could argue maybe Marriott's bringing that to the table for sure. But I just think that there's no F&B program. There's no experiences beyond the home. There's very minimal that you're offering outside of the home when it's a commodity short-term rental. So I always thought it was a flawed concept to dump a ton of money into brand for a massive commodity short-term rental company like Sonder, like Domio, like Stay Alfred, like the Guild. I mean, all of them have gone up in smoke. COVID played a role in that, but the writing was on the wall. I mean, at least from industry insiders, I feel like when this partnership happened and it was viewed as largely a lifeline. So the whole thing is a bit curious. I don't know, they knew there was a lot of financial instability when the partnership was announced, and then, things just must have deteriorated significantly. But yeah, to me, the whole idea of investing a ton of money in brand for a commodity product, I just don't think people care. I think they're shopping for value, they're shopping for amenities. And look, if you're building a one-of-a-kind experience, with multiple units, with, maybe F&B, with, beautiful landscape that's interwoven into the story of the stay, then I think you can build a brand. I mean, we've tried to do that with Onera, with my next property, Bahia in South Florida. But if you're a, 3-bedroom townhouse in DC in a good location with, the same West Elm furniture that everybody else has, I don't know that brand matters.
Very well said. Edwin and Scott, any comments there?
I completely agree with him. For me personally, I tried Sonder for probably 3 times in 3 different states. Each one was a very bland experience. Because if you need any assistance while you're there, they encourage you to use the app, but then the app doesn't work half the time. And the staff that they have working at the location is, you'll be lucky if they got their GED. They just know nothing. There's no training. There's no anything. For me, the real takeaway is this: innovation in hospitality only works when it's grounded with hospitality fundamentals, guest care, operational discipline, and clear communication. Sonder built tech, Marriott built trust, but you can't outsource trust. And when it collapses, everyone, from the guests to the employees, they all pay the price.
Yeah. No, I think what I find interesting about all of this is is there a future where we'll actually see, let's tease this out, and let's say Marriott was attracted to the tech. Maybe Sonder was attracted to Marriott's distribution, probably, right? Let's just assume that for a second here. I wonder if part of the challenge is Marriott's getting to a point from a loyalty perspective, from a brand portfolio perspective, where they're just maybe too big. Maybe what we're seeing too is the future of of travelers, the future of the discerning travelers anyways, is going to be maybe this decoupling of am I loyal to just Bonvoy holistically and all 40 some odd brands that are associated with it, or am I really only loyal to a segment of those brands? Will we see sort of Bonvoy after all this rethink its structure? Will there be a Bonvoy Premium or a Bonvoy Plus that just wraps additional rewards and benefits to a segment of the brands that are part of the Marriott portfolio? In other words, is the distribution that they tout, is the brand power that they tout, is it maybe a little bit at a tipping point, right? Is larger just always better? And these are, big questions. I would argue this is also tangential and adjacent to the core issue. But it did get me thinking from a consumer perspective, whether or not, right, if the bet was that consumers liked Sonder, consumers liked differentiated stays, consumers liked tech-enabled stays where they didn't have to check in at a front desk, if that is true, and if from the Sonder perspective, consumers love Marriott Bonvoy, if that assumption is true, I wonder if we need to rethink some of those assumptions. So a little bit of a stretch, I will admit, but that's where my head went.
I think it's happening everywhere, right? So when I started 30 years ago, and Hyatt had 3 brands, and now they're nearing 30, and it's happening with all the other same companies too. It's no longer people first, guests first, employees first. It's shareholders first, and there may be nothing wrong with that, right? That's just the times we live in, just like so many other companies that are massively growing. But it's just adding more rooms, and it's focusing on franchises, focusing on licensing deals. It's no longer focusing on management contracts. It's expanding the room count that counts. Without adding a lot of overheads, and it's happening with all brands. So I think this was also a move to diversify and add another massively growing company to the portfolio. I think it's not much more than that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think no doubt it's chasing growth. I mean, right? That's that they're trying to add
Of course.
units, add distribution to their mix of properties. So I'm sure that's where it came from. I'm quite surprised with the downfall and how it blew up so quickly, and that there wasn't a way to I would have thought Marriott would have handled it in a way that wasn't so abrupt and sort
Yeah.
of pulling the rug out from everyone and everything.
Yeah.
It just seems like for a company that's built on brand, right? Brand is
Right.
their whole value. It just is shocking that it wouldn't have been handled a bit more delicately. I mean, even if it would have meant, it would have hurt them a bit financially. They wouldn't have got paid on, some of the stuff that Sonder owed. I mean, whatever, from a brand reputation standpoint, it's just really surprising to me that that's how it went down.
Yeah.
But yes, chasing
Yeah,
growth. I mean, I don't know what else it would be besides chasing growth.
It's a PR nightmare, right? And it's very unlike Marriott. So that's why there must be something else that's going to come out anytime soon.
Well, we will be watching, and I'm sure we will have an update in a future episode as we learn more about the story. I do want to move on to our second story, which is, speaking of large brands, around the brand that Hilton has recently launched called the Outset Collection. They officially began accepting bookings at their first 2 properties. The Outset Collection, they claim, has a broader pipeline of 60-plus hotels and the potential growth to have 500 properties as a part of the Outset Collection across U.S. and Canada. The brand is designed to capture travelers who are seeking boutique-style, locally rooted stays, but with the distribution, loyalty access, and operational muscle of Hilton, not unlike Marriott's Outdoor Collection, which again was announced relatively recently as well, and they've begun to accept bookings at those properties as well. Seems like the model is a little bit different. Marriott's kind of bringing in existing assets into the collection. It sounds like Hilton has an approach that's a little bit more focused on working with developers who are building new properties that they can welcome into the Outset Collection. Edwin, I wanted to start with you here. We were just kind of hinting at this at the tail end of the last story, but brands are getting bigger. They're creating more and more brands. Where is this all going? Is this an attempt to add value to the consumer? Is this an attempt to confuse the consumer? Anytime there's, when Marriott launched the Autograph Collection, the way that everything was positioned, both I think to hotel owners and then also to the consumers, this wasn't a Marriott, even though it is and was. What do you think the play is here, and any just musings again on this move by Hilton?
Yeah. So number 25 brand, right, in the Hilton portfolio, if anybody was counting. And I think the first reaction from a lot of people was, "Yep, we needed another hotel brand." But two opened, 60 more coming, and interesting enough, only in the US and Canada. At the moment, but it could be clever, right? They're into locations that are off the beaten track, locations Hilton's not necessarily would go to, so it could make a lot of sense. But I think there's 3 elements to it, right? If we break this down, one is Hilton, one is owners, and one is what's happening from a guest perspective. So I think from a Hilton perspective, it makes sense. There's a lifestyle and a collection segment, right? 2 different, sometimes they merge, but it's massively growing in the world. All the attention's on there. It's the biggest growing segment. And I read somewhere that half of the hotels in the world are still independents, right? So there's a massive pool to jump into and to pick from. It's easy. It's conversions, little capex. You don't need to comply fully with the brand, so it makes a lot of sense to grow again. A room count to have a larger distribution. So from Hilton's perspective, I totally get it. So they're saying, keep your independent name, keep your design, keep your local story, but you can plug into Hilton's grid. So the question here is, how are they going to manage to keep this up? I think, the danger here is, with 500 properties in mind, is if all those properties are going to start to look and feel the same, what's left of hotels with soul? And are these really independent hotels that are going to be converted, or are larger investment companies looking at independents, tagging along, putting little capex in there, and creating a dollar segment that was supposed to be a segment that had life and had soul. I don't know, but clever potentially, and I thought it could be like the cool indie cafe where you could honor your Starbucks rewards, right? And I think that's sort of a bit of a take on this. And then obviously, how independent can you be? Because the word independent comes back, and people like that. It's a great buzzword. But how independent can you be, and can you remain, right? When you're working with a giant corporate, and I think that remains to be seen, because there's always things like brand standards and audits, but it really depends on how this is going to get rolled out. Because the danger there is, if you don't, if all these properties are not rigorously checked in some sort of way or follow certain standards, is that quality is then no longer controlled, right? And that's a big danger from a brand collection once you set it up. How can you, as Hilton and as Outset, keep watching what's happening? 500 is a lot to watch. And obviously, if they're too independent, that could be really tricky too. And I think then from an owner perspective, if I was an owner and I didn't quite know, I've got the money, I have a design, but I don't quite know how to market this, and I don't want to hire big teams. This is clever, right? And it might open up the door for a lot of investors to say, hey, if I can plug in another hotel in my hometown somewhere in Montana into the Hilton, and thinking they're going to fill it, which we don't know if it's going to happen, because it's the same thing that happened with Sonder, obviously. Did Marriott fill all those rooms, or are there liabilities, as in Marriott, you need to get to a certain level of occupancy to get back the average rate when people use their points, and I'm not sure how it's done in Hilton, but more people coming through Hilton honor rewards into your property doesn't always mean a better rate or better value, right? Better ROI. So there's a lot of strings attached, I think, here. And I think from an owner perspective, what's really the value add here? If I'm an owner, my occupancy is pretty good, my niche is pretty good. What am I doing this for? Is this really going to help me, or am I better than off investing that money, because it'll cost them, investing that money into better digital strategy or better storytelling? I think it could be best of both worlds, but it really depends on how that's going to play out. And I think then lastly, from a guest perspective, for some this may mean I get to use my points. Hilton has to do this, right, because they have to compete with the other brands. So there was no other choice, I think, for them than to get into the segment. But from a guest perspective, does this feel good to me? If I'm looking for an independent, does it feel trustworthy that I have the Hilton brand underneath it? Or if I'm familiar with the property, do I really care? Do I really care that Hilton's above a property that I know, or where reviews are great, or where I'm going to stay? So, I think that's another tricky one to think about. And when I was thinking about these brands growing, it's like buying homemade bread from a giant corporate supermarket chain, right? Does one mix with the other? I don't know. But if you zoom out, it's clever. They needed to. All the big brands are converging. Everybody's trying to grab an increased room count and try to grab part of this market. So I think we'll have to watch to see where this is going to go.
Ben, I want to ask you a follow-up question here, because the announcement of the Outset collection, coupled with Marriott's recent outdoor collection, was actually quite inspiring to a lot of folks in like the glamping space, the luxe glamping space, which obviously has had a moment over the last several years. A lot of folks on social were talking about how this validates, right, this burgeoning, we could argue if it's burgeoning or not, but a burgeoning industry in the glamping space. This proves that institutional capital, institutional brands are taking this segment seriously. What color, if any, would you add to how the glamping community, how folks in the developer space kind of see this move?
Yeah, look, I think that the Outset collection, it's not like Marriott Outdoors where it's more purely outdoor focused. I mean, Outset, it could be urban. It's just off the beaten path, maybe in a lesser known neighborhood or something like that. So it's not quite, as targeted at glamping or the outdoors like Marriott's is. I think there's a validation of guests wanting independent and wanting something that feels boutiquey and that has a story and has authenticity, feels connected to the local community. So I think that there's definitely validation there. My question always comes around to it's just very expensive distribution for the ownership side, right? If you're going to create a cool hip property, build a story around it, instead of paying 5 to 10% to Hilton for all of my bookings, regardless of whether or not that it comes from the Hilton distribution network, it's just really expensive. I could reinvest that hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars a year, depending on the size of the hotel, into experiential amenities, into Instagrammable moments, into content, into video, into storytelling, right? Into meta ads or Google ads, right? Driving bookings direct to me as opposed to relying on Hilton to, showcase me along with the hundreds or thousands of other properties that they're supposedly marketing for. So that really becomes the question. I think it makes a ton of sense for Hilton. If, developers sign up for this in groves, better for them.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Scott, anything else you'd add to this story? Any perspective you want to share?
Well, I mean, you mentioned before adding value to the customer. On the surface and in press releases, I think that they're all about that. Behind the scenes, I think they're slaves to shareholders, and I don't think they have a choice. They have to continue to grow. They have to continue to, these companies, Hilton and Marriott will have 50 brands under their belt in the next 10 years. I'm convinced, because they don't have a choice. They have to grow. What's different here is the timing. The boutique segment is exploding again, and Hilton's moving aggressively to capture conversions from independents who are tired of post-COVID volatility. Hilton's language, soulful, independent experiences backed by Hilton Power. That's great positioning for somebody who doesn't know how to market their property. Yeah, they might have beautiful design, gorgeous decor, perfect location, just everything's flawless. But I still speak to hotel owners and hotel groups on a daily basis that have no idea how to build a marketing team, how to hire the first person, how to do a digital strategy. They don't even want to invest in this kind of stuff. These are my daily battles. So I can see owners lining up to do this. They would gladly pay the 5 or 10% to take away that headache. Just my opinion.
Yeah, that's exactly what Ben just said. And I totally agree with Ben. I think that's probably the best way forward. But you need to know how to do this, and you need to hire people. And
Correct.
And then you need to lead people who hopefully know this when you're not aware of how to do this. Right. And I think the danger here is that true independents may not fall for this or may not sign up, but investment companies who hook up or buy independents and own a portfolio of independent hotels might plug in, right? And I think then if you become less independent in that sense, it'll just be another Curio, which is another brand of Hilton, right? So I think there's the big danger. So how do you really keep them true to what you intended to be? But yeah, you're right. It's another strategy of adding growth.
But I'll tell you one thing. I'm sorry, Zach.
No, go Scott. Go.
For travelers, this is great news. You can finally earn points at a place that feels like a one-off local gem. And for the industry, it's another sign that individuality and scalability are no longer enemies.
Yeah. And what I was just going to add too is I do wonder if there's this new class of hospitality entrepreneur, owner, operator that is emerging that maybe didn't grow up in the industry, that actually, to Ben's point, does care and understands brand, understands how to build audience, understands how to market. And the biggest elephant in the room here is that, great, I get an honors guest coming and staying at my hotel, I get zilch meaningful data about that guest, right? And so I do wonder if we're going to see this. I think about the Shopify Amazon dynamic a lot, right? And Shopify being their positioning being arm the rebels, right? Like we're going to build the tech stack that you need, the marketing stack that you need to compete with, the largest retailer in the world. And I think like I wonder, right, if we're going to see more owner operators. Maybe this is a generational change. I don't know. And again, I still think like a lot we have to wait and see what happens here. But I wonder if the idea of owning guest data, the idea of being able to build a meaningful relationship with your guest is going to be more important to developers and owners over the next, decade, or if at the end of the day, it's just not as important, right? And I think either could go, but I do wonder, and in conversations that I have, Ben, in conversations that I'm sure you have, there does seem to be this like rebellious spirit underway of like, how do I not flag? Right? Like, what can I do to not flag? And again, that won't be a solution for everybody. But I do wonder if we'll see more of a battle play out and a little bit more tension here.
Yeah, one thing I would add to that is I think that what owners need to do, whether or not they decide to go with a flag or they decide to go independent and not be associated with a flag, like assess your options and actually find out what is Hilton, Marriott, like what are these companies going to actually do for me? Because you're potentially getting locked into a long-term contract. And I think for a long time, slap a flag on a hotel, it's going to cash flow. You hold it for a few years, flip it. You're pretty much insured to make money. That model is not really there right now. A lot of these branded and flagged hotels are not cash flowing. And so if you're locked into a long-term contract, you don't control your marketing. You don't have the data to sort of figure out how to increase demand or improve your marketing and your brand, then you're in a really tough spot. So I just think people have to do that calculus, really press these brands. What are you going to do for me? What do I have access to? If we're not performing, where does that look? Where does that go? So that's what I would do if I was an owner.
Yeah. Well, let's get to our final story of this episode, which is that to kind of bring it back to the short-term rental space and the convergence of hotels and short-term rentals that we started with. Airbnb announced in their earnings call last week that they are now accepting hotels on their platform. Now, they are being very strategic with where hotels exist on their platform. They're starting in markets like LA, New York, and Madrid, where no news to anyone, markets where short-term rentals have been all but banned and or require 30-day minimum stays. Very interesting move. It's also interesting that they are starting with independent brands and boutique brands. So they've said that they're working with operators who are not part of flagged hotels to run these test campaigns to see what consumer adoption rate might be for these properties. I'd love to get your thoughts, Edwin, as our resident hotelier here. What is your perspective here? I know that for years, right, the hotel lobby in particular and Airbnb's Silicon Valley lobby have been nasty towards each other. I remember this was a few years ago, going to New York, and just everywhere you saw these ads about that the hotel lobby talked about how horrible Airbnb was, why Airbnb was pricing people out of the city. I think there's been a lot of data that's come out since then that maybe questions whether there was any validity there or not. Long story short, what is your thought, Edwin, on this move? Does it make sense for the consumer? Does it make sense for Airbnb? What do hotels think about this? How do you interpret this news?
Yeah, we didn't talk about Airbnb when I was in hotels. They were the enemy. But like everything else, it's just starting to morph. Everything's starting to blend, and I think I'm getting kind of lost on where this is going to go, and at some point where people are going to find their information. With OTAs tapping into chat, hotels into Airbnb, Booking.com is in everywhere. It's going to be really tricky to see from a consumer point of view, where are you going to get your information? Where do you look? Where do I get my loyalty program? I mean, is Airbnb going to increase or put in a loyalty program? Because that may be another way forward of besides all their current rewards. But it's just one big pile, one big pot of integrated booking systems, and I don't know yet how this is going to play out. It'll be really interesting to see what kind of tech they're going to use and who's going to sign up. But I think from a consumer point of view, this is going to be very, very, very confusing.
Scott, what is your take on this?
I mean, it's more of a seismic shift than a headline. Let's call it what it is. Airbnb isn't a home rental platform anymore. It's becoming a full-fledged hospitality ecosystem, one that happens to have the largest digital audience in travel.
Yeah.
Now, their hotels of the future, or hotels are the future statement says everything. Airbnb's realizing what many tech disruptors eventually learn. You can't scale forever without structure, and structure is what hotels do best. So they're just getting into bed with each other. But the $1 million question is it a one night stand, or are they going to be happily married for 40 years?
Yeah. Ben, what's your take here?
Yeah, I think Airbnb is making this big shift from, hey, spare bedroom in my house, sort of the individual host that they always championed, but they made all their money from professional hosts. They're finally acknowledging the fact that they need to support and cultivate these professional hosts, whether that's a short-term rental operator with 300 properties in their portfolio or hotels with 100 rooms in their hotel. So I think it makes sense. I actually love it for hotels for a lot of reasons. I think there's a lot of hotels that don't use Airbnb. And as Scott mentioned, what is it? Getting upwards of 300 million people, active users or somewhere around there is estimated on Airbnb. It's more than Booking and Expedia combined, if I'm not wrong. So I think it's a great distribution channel for hotels. Their new commission structure, the 15.5%, is still lower, or at least on par with Expedia and Booking. And it's simpler for the traveler, right? I think their whole charge the guest sum and the host sum was this. I mean, Brian Chesky even admitted it, right? It was basically this legacy system and fee structure that they never really, looked at first principles. Does this make sense longer term? It's less fees tacked on the end for guests. There's more price transparency. It's easier for hotels. So yeah, I mean, I hope to see a lot of cool independent properties adopt this as a great distribution channel. And I think the ones that adopt early, optimize their listings, and really double down on this could see really amazing distribution from Airbnb. I mean, in my properties, we've always been on Airbnb, kind of being in this hybrid between short-term rental and hotel. I think a lot of people see us as. So we've always generated, Airbnb has always been the leading OTA for us, over Booking, over Expedia. And I think if hotels really dive in head first with this announcement and with the shift to showcasing more hotels on Airbnb, I think it could be a huge win for them.
I think it'll be interesting to see how the consumer reacts to this over time. And I do believe, I mean, Airbnb's, I think they do some of the best brand marketing in the world. I mean, their team is just truly remarkable. I mean, they've become a verb, which is every Silicon Valley startup's dream, right? And they've done it. I think that they're going to have to change their name at some point, though. I mean, candidly, from a brand perspective,
doesn't work anymore.
No, and even the experiences and the services components, it's and this is just their Airbnb experiences kind of reimagined from their launch a few years ago during COVID, and I think they have a lot to prove here. Now they have, I think, the best travel app in the world. They have again some of the best UX UI designers in the world. Brian Chesky,
very good,
as we all know, is just truly phenomenal as an independent contributor and also as a CEO. And so I would not bet against them by any means, but I do think it'll be interesting to see how the consumer shifts. I've always thought Expedia was really poised to help consumers understand they are the marketplace for all things travel, because they own Vrbo, right? And then obviously you book your hotels through Expedia if you're not necessarily a discerning consumer that understands that you should book direct. But if you still book through OTAs, you probably use Expedia or Booking, depending on what part of the world you're in. And yet the execution of them as the one-stop travel shop hasn't quite happened yet. Maybe they're just too antiquated of a business for it to ever happen. I do think that that's where they're focused now. I think that they're trying to be a leader, obviously, in kind of how AI is shaking up how travel discovery and bookings are happening today with their deals with like Perplexity and OpenAI, and the recent deal that they announced with Meta for Instagram, for example. But this is just a long, convoluted way of saying that, like, I think Airbnb has a lot of work to do to, like, they were very anti-hotel in all of their marketing right today. Like, why would you stay in a hotel? You should book an Airbnb. So it'll be very, very interesting to watch how the marketing shifts in the coming months, if presuming these tests work, and whether consumers actually do think of Airbnb as the travel platform of the future, or whether it'll still always be, when I'm traveling with my family, when I'm traveling with my friends, yeah, I'm booking an Airbnb, but when I'm with my partner, like, no, that the hotel booking's certainly happening elsewhere. I think the jury's still out on this, and I do think at some point Brian's gonna have to, like, just, like, let it go and come up with a new brand. I don't think Airbnb as a name can be the leading travel app and a discovery mechanism in the next 10 years. I think you have to change the name.
Well, hold on. What does Airbnb originally mean? Air bed and breakfast. It was an airbed, right, in somebody's apartment. That's not what an Airbnb is today, right? That's not, and it's air bed and breakfast. It's not air STR, right? Or I don't know. I just question, like,
but the B&B means something to people, right? Yeah. It's very hard to disassociate from the B&B. I agree with the air, and I agree that Airbnb needed some explanation initially, but I think it's hard to get rid of the B&B.
I just think there's going to be an extension on Airbnb, like the Airbnb experience or something like that. I don't think Airbnb is going anywhere. There's too much brand value there. I think long term, we're heading in towards a single hybrid marketplace where the guest doesn't care if it's a house, a boutique hotel, or a resort. They just care if it's easy to book, has social proof, and feels authentic. And Airbnb is rolling the dice. Let's see what happens. Yeah.
Their smartest move as of late too was just, and they hinted at this in their earnings call about, like, hey, we want to be a social platform. And, like, you can, they now let you obviously invite people to the stay. You can message the group on the stay. They're venturing into the social space. And that's really, that's brilliant and very smart. If they can make travel social, and they are the leading, brand in the space today that could do something like that, given their resources and their consumer adoption. But I think it's gonna be hard to get rid of the name. Now, okay, I guess to your point, Ben, what does Expedia mean?
Yeah, well, what does Google mean, right? I mean, I don't know.
But see, Google got away from this with Alphabet, right? And that was the solve of, like, this parent company.
They still call it Google. They still call it Google.
Google. And it doesn't bother anybody that they do a zillion things. I mean, I don't think it does, at least, right? But so one thing I want to say on this, Airbnb, Brian Chesky, where is the video? Everybody wants video. Nobody wants static photos. If you're going to become a social platform, if you want to compete with Instagram, TikTok, the way people want to discover travel, where is the video?
I have a feeling he's already working on it.
Well said.
I haven't heard anything about it. It's just shocking, right? That they're doing all these other things and video is not already here.
It's because they care too much about the brand, like, as they should, right? And I think the control, right? Yeah. Videos are complicated. Like, the format is complicated.
So,
like,
it hurt the UI. It would hurt the UI.
Yes,
maybe.
It would hurt the UI and the UX, right? If you empower people to upload these, MP4 files, and no one knows what they're doing, and they upload, like, a massive file, and it slows down the user. I mean, it is dangerous. It's much more dangerous, right, than a photo. It's easier to strip down and reduce the quality of a photo than it is a video, and for the consumer not to be, like, not to notice, quite frankly. But Edwin, you were going to say something. Sorry, I think I cut you off.
I was thinking about what we just all said. Maybe it's full circle now. If Airbnb was about hosting somebody in your home and cooking them breakfast, this is what family run hotels have been doing for hundreds of years. Mm-hmm. Maybe we're back to what hotels were intended to do, and maybe Airbnb is realizing that that's the best way of hospitality. Said a hotelier.
I think Brian Chesky just found his lead consultant on the rebrand project, and I think his name is Edwin Kramer. All right, friends. Well, before we conclude, this is a segment that we're going to at least attempt to do every week. I think we should do it every week if you like it. And we're calling this segment Spice of the Week. So quick hot takes, strong opinions with no data required on just what we think about a latest trend or happening in the industry. Ben, I'm going to start with you. What is your Spice of the Week?
Well, I'm at the Carillon Wellness Hotel in Miami, and so it's got me thinking quite a bit about sleep optimization in hotels, something that has long been a pillow menu, right, and maybe turn down service or something like that. And the Carillon's taking it to a whole nother level, as well as other hotel brands like Equinox, like Ciro. There's a bunch of hotel brands really leaning into this. It's smart mattresses with temperature control. It is circadian lighting. It is, we're doing this whole sleep wellness program, me and my wife, while here, that has a whole variety of different machines and experiences that we're going to use that will hopefully help our sleep. So I think this is the cutting edge of amenities, wellness frontier, and really, can promote guest loyalty, because if I can have a personalized sleep experience that I know I can come to expect at every hotel I go to within this brand, it's a big needle mover to book that stay. So sleep wellness, I think, is cutting edge of hotel amenities.
Amazing. Scott, how about you, sir? What is your Spice of the Week?
I just want to tack on to Ben. So me and Tammy spoke on a panel at the IHS conference a few months ago, and they're doing some spectacular stuff. So for me, the era of creator-led brands in hospitality. So we're watching a massive shift where creators are becoming brands, and then brands are trying to act like creators. The hospitality's next wave of influence won't come from corporations. It'll come from individuals who they bring in-house to lead a marketing campaign from the inside looking out. Now, I'll give you a couple examples. I met with a couple hotel group owners here while I'm in Thailand, and they are building hotels with creator space inside the hotel, podcast rooms, Instagram places, interview rooms. I mean, it's unbelievable. I'm telling you right now, the future of hotels, it's going to be very, very cool. And just going back to our conversation earlier in the podcast, I think that once the owners that are the dinosaurs of the industry, they weave off and die off and hand off to their younger generation, I think the next wave of hotels are going to be very, very cool.
I love it. That's amazing. I actually was in a hotel in Singapore. It was Edition, Edwin, and the Edition there, and they had a creator space for podcasters, and that was the first time I had ever seen something like that in like a luxury hotel in particular. And I was like, this is amazing.
There's like 30 under construction in Southeast Asia.
That's amazing.
It's gonna go east and it's gonna move west.
Yeah. I'll share my Spice of the Week, and then Edwin, I'll let you take us home here. My Spice of the Week is, I think, for a moment at least, independent brands have an incredible opportunity to compete on AI search. And let me just give you a quick anecdote on what I mean here. So I have a large family. My dad's 60th birthday is coming up in January, and so we were looking for a place that would accommodate all of us. Several of us have kids. There's dogs. There's girlfriends, etc. So it's a big group, right? Trying to filter through Airbnb, trying to look at booking any of the other sites was just like proving to be way too difficult given sort of our constraints. So we wrote a prompt. It was a very specific prompt, included price, location, driving like distance from where we all live. That specific. We need rooms that do X and other rooms that do Y, and kitchens that do X and Y, etc. It was very like specific prompt. Anyhow, the first result that was returned was from a website that looked like it was probably built in the 90s and like never paid attention to since. I ended up going back. It was on the third page of Google, which is, as they say, like the best place to hide a dead body because no one goes to the third page of Google. So I did find the actual website eventually later. But my point is, from that search on ChatGPT, I found the website. It was a call to reserve, right? I called, they sent me these beautiful photos of and I had seen some photos of the listing of the home. It's a stunning lodge on like a 160 acre like farm in Virginia. And the photos that they sent me over email were 1,000 times better than the photos on their website. I had to call to book. They had incredible reviews that they sent me via PDF. Anyways, point being, if I had found their property never would have ranked on Airbnb ever, right? The property didn't even rank on Google. The website was horrible. I found it through AI search, and it literally is the perfect place, and we booked it. We called, we booked, we put down the credit card. So now I don't think that this will last, but my point here is I do think that there is a moment to get serious about figuring out how do you optimize your hotel for, GEO, as some folks are calling it, AIEO, as others are calling it. But basically, the way that consumers are increasingly searching today, they're using agents to facilitate their search. They're using agents to complete their bookings. And I think you don't need to rank number one on Google. You don't need to rank at the top of Airbnb, because prompts can be so specific. You actually have the opportunity to meet your right fit customers in a really special place right now. I don't know how long that will last, but right now, if you're not already thinking about it, I would go and work with somebody to figure out how do we make sure that we're doing everything within our power to make sure that our content is structured to be usable by agents. Anyway, sorry, that was a little long, but Edwin, what about you, man? What's your spice of the week?
So, in November, I was sort of trying to think back of what this year was like and to think ahead of next year. And in our business, there's a lot of buzzwords. So for me, this year has really been about authenticity, right? Which you hear everywhere and everybody uses it, and we're not quite sure what it means anymore, I think. Wellness, longevity, experiences, feelings and emotions. And lately, a lot of people, find me somebody who's not redefining luxury. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what the buzzwords are next year. What's going to come up, and to see what this redefinition of luxury is going to be like in our business.
Anti-luxury.
Barefoot luxury.
Luxury for all.
Well, folks, I think that was a wonderful way to wrap up this first episode of This Week in Hospitality. Ben, Edwin, Scott, thank you guys so much for taking the time to chat, share these ideas. For our listeners, we are live wherever you get your podcasts. All the links to YouTube, Spotify, Apple, etc. will be in the show notes below. Please, please, please go click through on your favorite preferred podcast listening service and hit follow, hit subscribe, leave us a comment, share it with your friends. This is going to be an epic project. We are so thankful to each and every one of you for tuning into the project. We're going to do some fun things in the future episodes too. We're going to test different segments. We're going to experiment with different formats. We want to know what you love and what brings you the most value as you end your week, start your weekend, and really our goal is to bring you inspiration into the next week. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Scott, Edwin, Ben, adios, amigos.
All right, guys.
Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining us on this week's episode of This Week in Hospitality. If any part of today's discussion sparked an idea or helped you think differently about the industry, we'd love to continue the conversation. You can find each of us on LinkedIn or on X or Instagram. That's Ben Wolff, Scott Eddy, Edwin Kramer, and myself, Zach Busekrus. Just search for our names or scroll down to the show notes and you can click and follow us and connect with us on your social platform of choice. This Week in Hospitality is presented by Journey. Journey is a loyalty platform built specifically for independent boutique hotels and high-touch hospitality brands. Journey's mission is to give operators the same powerful rewards engine, data intelligence, and guest insights that major chains rely on, without asking them to give up their individuality, their soul, or their story. At a moment when travelers are craving unique, meaningful experiences and operators are navigating rising OTA costs, fragmented data, and shifting expectations, Journey provides a unified ecosystem that strengthens guest relationships, increases direct bookings, and helps independent properties thrive on their own terms. We're building a global curated alliance of exceptional hotels, villas, and residences, a network that rewards exploration, empowers individuality, and gives independents the scale that they truly deserve. If you're an owner or operator of an extraordinary independently owned and operated hotel or residence or group, and you want to see whether your property is a fit for the Journey Alliance, you can learn more and apply to be a part of Journey at alliance.journey.com. All right, friends, we'll see you next Friday. Until then, keep building exceptional experiences that are worth remembering.